What is up, guys? We're back again today with another video. For today's video, guys, as you guys can see on the screen, we are doing another tier making video. And on my first tier making video I did the NFL teams, and you guys were so supportive of that video. You guys were so engaging in the comments that I decided, you know what? Let's do another NFL based video. However, this time today we're going to be tiering and comparing the different NFL quarterbacks for this next upcoming year. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys hit that like button down below. And without further ado, let's get into the video. All right. So here we go. First on this list, we have Josh Allen. And you know what? I have never been a hater, really, of Josh Allen. I think his biggest detriment is his turnovers. I know in the last couple seasons, he's had a lot of picks. He's had a lot of fumbles and whatnot. However, I think that he still is a do-it-all type of quarterback. Dude has a cannon of an arm. He can make plays with his legs. And overall, just in general speaking, he is a good quarterback. Definitely has improved a lot since he first came into the league. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and put Josh Allen as our first one in not top tier, but tier 1 elite. I believe he belongs in the elite category of quarterbacks right now. And yeah, just overall, I mean, the guy takes his team to the playoffs every single year. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have Baker Mayfield. And for what it's worth, I think Baker Mayfield gets a lot more hate than he should. I'm not saying that he's an elite or even a great quarterback. However, I do think, though, that he can win you a game or two if needed. I mean, we saw him when he was on the Rams, and he came in and, you know, for not being on the team very long, actually kind of balled out, you know? So with that being said, I know he had Sean McVay as his head coach, but the guy has done decent wherever he's gone. I mean, minus the Panthers. And I mean, going to the Browns and being drafted by the Browns, I mean, that team, you know, that whole entire franchise had been in shambles for years. I think, you know, in a 2-year span, they had won one game. And when, you know, he gets drafted, he completely turns around that franchise. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that. I mean, I think somebody had to get chopped off of the Browns in order to basically own up to all the mistakes that was going on over there. But in my opinion, it shouldn't have been Baker Mayfield. He had also taken that team to the playoffs and had won a playoff game with them. So with that being said, I think Baker Mayfield gets more hate than he should. And in my opinion, I think Baker Mayfield is an average quarterback. Like, he's not terrible. He's not a baller, I don't think, but he's not a quarterback that I would put in the shouldn't start category. I think there is, out of the 32 teams in the NFL, I think he belongs in this league as a starter. So in my opinion, I'm going to put him in my tier 3 average quarterback. So I haven't really gone over my tiers either, guys. I mean, let's just go over those real quick before we get too into this video. We've got top dog, so that's the #1 QB in the league, and I'm sure a lot of you guys already know who that is. Next, though, we have tier 1, which is the elite group, which is all the elite quarterbacks that year after year, they take their quarterbacks to the playoffs. Tier 2 is going to be ballers for sure. Like, they might not be considered elite, but they're guys that will win you games. They're for the most part reliable, and yeah, that's basically what that tier is. Tier 3 is going to be average. I mean, just your average Joe in the NFL. They're going to be any guy from, you know, rank 25 to probably about rank 15-ish or so is where I would put average. Tier 4 is guys that just flat out shouldn't start. This is kind of the worst tier out of all of these. And then this bottom one here is rookies or people we just haven't seen play yet. So that's the tiers that I'm going based off of for this video. And with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our next quarterback. All right, next quarterback on the list, we have Joe Burrow. And man, has this guy been balling out since his freaking final year of college at LSU. Like, I know that the year that he got drafted, he tore his ACL, but even then he was balling out, man. Like, you know, after he tore his ACL, he came back the next year, won comeback player of the year. I mean, this guy has taken his team to the playoffs. He's taken his team to the Super Bowl. I mean, this is kind of like in the situation I was talking about with Baker Mayfield, where Joe Burrow gets drafted to a franchise that was almost considered a laughingstock, or a team that hadn't been really successful in years, gets drafted to this team. It completely just flips the franchise. And, you know, drafting Jamar Chase helped a lot with him, but even before the year before he had Jamar Chase, the guy was still balling out. So with that being said, I think that Joe Burrow belongs in this tier 1 elite group. I would even argue that he is definitely better than I was about to say Joe Burrow, but Josh Allen. But with that being said, both of these guys belong in tier 1 elite group. Both of them are straight up just they're franchise quarterbacks, and they're both guys that do deserve to be, you know, in the higher paid echelon of quarterbacks in the NFL. And with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, next on this list we have Derek Carr, and I think Derek Carr is kind of one of those ones that is iffy to talk about just because, you know, he's been on the Raiders, and for those of you who know a good deal about the NFL, the Raiders have been a poverty franchise, kind of like the Browns, kind of like the Bengals, to where it's like they always seem to have kind of, the parts that they need in order to go on a good run. And in my opinion, it's never really been Derek Carr's fault. Although I'm not a Raiders fan, so I'm not watching every single Raiders game. I don't, I think there's games where Derek Carr has lost them the game, but I also think that he's not the main reason that the Raiders weren't as successful as they should be. I'm pretty sure I've seen a stat where it's like every single year almost that Derek Carr was on the Raiders, they've had a bottom of the league defense. And so, with that being said, I think Derek Carr gets a little bit hated on more than he should. However, I don't think he's a top tier quarterback. I would borderline put him in baller for sure. We'll see how he does with the Saints this season. If he has another terrible year with the Saints, he definitely needs to go down to average or shouldn't start. But I do think he's better than Baker Mayfield and the guys that are going to be in this tier, but not as good as the guys that are in this tier. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Alrighty, next on the list we have Matt Corral, which was drafted, I believe, last year and didn't get to really play at all. I think he might have played a game or two or so, but I'll be honest with you guys, we don't have enough knowledge of him as a starter to really even have that much to talk to him about, talk about him. But with that being said, I'm gonna put him in rookie or hasn't played, just because, like I said, hasn't even played a full season. Hasn't really had a offense that's been built around him, and it's kind of unfortunate because it doesn't really seem like he is going to have an offense built around him, or that he's even going to have a chance to start, because it kind of seems like Bryce Young is going to be the surefire starter for that team, which, is deservingly so. But with that being said, it's like, why go draft Matt Corral if, you're it's tough, man. There's a couple quarterbacks that have gotten drafted to these teams where it was like, they never get a chance to start, and then the next year there's a guy that gets drafted onto the team that was drafted, higher than they were. So, they're an even more sought after prospect. And so it's just kind of unfortunate that for Matt Corral, he was drafted by a team where they ended up doing really bad again. So they ended up drafting, really high, or they actually ended up trading for that pick with the Bears. But with that being said, we haven't seen enough of Matt Corral to really define an opinion on him. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and put him in this tier, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list we have Dak Prescott, and man, it is hard to talk about really any player that is on the Cowboys, America's team, if you will. But with Dak Prescott, it's really weird, man, because every single year he has a team that's put around him that definitely looks like they could go on a Super Bowl run. But every single time they come short in the playoffs, and whether you think that that's Dak Prescott's fault, or it's the play calls, or just the matchups, whatever you want to blame it on, it just seems like every year they just get so close but can't get it done. As far as Dak Prescott, I think he puts up really good numbers against bad teams like he should. But when it comes to the games where it's like, okay, now you're going against a playoff level team, he kind of collapses and is just kind of a shrunken version of himself. And with that being said, I think he's a good quarterback. He's not top elite tier like these guys are. I think he belongs in baller for sure. If he ends up taking his team to the NFC Championship or even to the Super Bowl, I think he moves up a tier. But with that being said, he hasn't proved that to us yet. And with that being said, I'm going to put him in baller for sure. And, that's just, I think, overall where he belongs. He needs to show us more, and he hasn't really showed us a whole great deal ever since he came into the league his rookie year. So with that being said, he's going to go in baller for sure. But, like I said, depending on how this next season goes for him, he could move up or down. So with that being said, let's move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have Andy Dalton. And to be honest with you, I'm not really sure why Andy Dalton is even on this list. I mean, I know Andy Dalton's been a starter for years with the Bengals and had a couple good seasons, but as of lately has been kind of bouncing back and forth between backup positions or roles. Excuse me. So, I mean, I believe last year he was with the Saints, and he actually had some decent games with them as a starter. Um, Man, this is tough. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I think I'd rather have Baker Mayfield than Andy Dalton. And, I'm not going to be as harsh or critical on the guy as I probably should be. but I'm gonna go ahead and put him in average. Depending on how the rest of this list goes, he might get moved up or down because kind of as I go through this list, guys, there might be a point where I might be like, you know what, actually, this guy doesn't belong in this tier. He needs to be either moved up or moved down. So. But as of right now, we're gonna keep Andy Dalton in average. I think the guy, as long as he has a good team around him, he won't necessarily cost the team, but at the same time, if he's got a crappy team around him, the guy's not going to go and win you games. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, the red rifle is going to stay right here in average, right next to Baker Mayfield. Even though, like I said, I'd rather have Baker Mayfield than him, I'm not going to go too harsh on him and say he shouldn't start because, like I said, there's 32 teams in the NFL. If I think that he could belong on the 32nd team in the NFL, like the worst team in the league, then I think that means he's qualified to be a starter. You know what I mean? Even if the 32nd team in the NFL is just outright terrible, that's still a position in the league, as a starter. So that's worth something. So, anyways, with that being said, I'm going on a tangent. Let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list we have Sam Darnold, and man, this guy has had a kind of an unfortunate career so far. I mean, gets drafted very high to the Jets, but he gets drafted to the Adam Gase Jets. And man, if you guys know anything about football and you know anything about Adam Gase and the Jets, that was a terrible run. Not to say that the Jets have really gone up from there. I mean, they have honestly gone up. I think Robert Saleh is starting to get them kind of in the right spot, and we'll see what Aaron Rodgers can do with them this coming up year. But man, what a tough situation to go to as a drafted rookie quarterback. But that being said, though, he got a second chance kind of over in Carolina. That whole situation though in Carolina was weird though because it's like you had Sam Darnold, you had Baker Mayfield, you had Matt Corral, I believe, because I believe that was all last year. You had PJ Walker too. Like they had this whole carousel of running back or not running back, excuse me, quarterbacks that they were running through, and it was like, which guy is your starter? It's like just give a guy a chance. And so I don't know. I think Sam Darnold is still young in this league. I think he still has a lot of opportunity to prove himself. He's very dynamic. I mean, I believe there is a reason why he was drafted so high. It's just, I don't know, man. The guy, he definitely is a quarterback that I don't think can just go out and win you a game with a crappy team. I think he's got to have pieces around him. So, with that being said, oh man, I think he's average too, man. Like he belongs here next to these guys. It's like it's tough, man, because as this tier keeps, expanding with more guys that I put into it, it's gonna be a toss up of like, well, is this guy better than this guy? Is this guy better than this guy? It's gonna be weird. I might need to add a tier by the end of this video, but we'll kind of see, as we're going along, what I need to do. But with that being said, I think Sam Darnold. I think he is average. I think there's quarterbacks in the league that are worse than him, but he's obviously not a baller, and he's not elite, and he's not top dog, obviously. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have Daniel Jones, and for as much of you guys that don't like the New York Giants, they made the playoffs last year, and you can credit that somewhat to Brian Daboll and kind of him, putting that franchise back together. However, I think Daniel Jones had a pretty good season last year. I mean, definitely had a good enough season where he got paid. He might be considered overpaid, but when it comes to quarterbacks in the league, having a young quarterback that can be somewhat dynamic, whether it's, being able to move around with the ball, run with the ball, or just straight up, just being able to get the ball down the field, I think, you got to pay him when you got him. You know what I mean? And if you don't have him, then you need to do bad enough to where you're going to be able to draft one. And the Giants are not really in a position to where they were going to do bad enough with Daniel Jones to go and draft one of these guys in this next draft that was going to be, a top 5 pick or whatever. So with that being said, I think it was smart that the Giants paid him. I think he's overall a pretty decent quarterback. It's just tough. I don't think he's average. I think honestly, Daniel Jones is a baller for sure. I mean, I think the toughest thing for him is that he never really had a lot of great weapons, as far as like his wide receiver core and whatnot. However, I do think he's got some guys this year that are going to take a step up. They went ahead and got him Darren Waller, which is going to help him a lot. Saquon Barkley sounds like he's going to be back, so I think that's going to help him a lot. So with that being said, I think Daniel Jones belongs in baller for sure. Depending on if he has like an elite season, you know, and he takes the Giants to the playoffs and they go on a run, he could end up moving up to here to this elite group. But if he ends up having an average or below average year, he's definitely going to get moved down to here. But for now, I think I'm okay with him being next to Dak Prescott and Derek Carr. I think that's kind of fitting. And with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, guys, we have Justin Fields. And Justin Fields he's in a very unique situation where it's like kind of like some of these other quarterbacks I've mentioned. He's kind of been put into this, poverty franchise or poverty team, if you will, and I don't know if necessarily he's gotten to show everything that he is capable of. I definitely think that the ability to scramble and run with the ball has helped him a lot with his ability in the NFL. However, though, he still kind of yet to prove that he can make all the throws and that he can really lead this team, to the playoffs and go on a playoff run. However, in the offseason, they obviously traded and got DJ Moore. They got Chase Claypool last year. They still have Darnell Mooney. They've got guys, running backs. God, I can't even remember what their running backs' names are, but I believe they went out and got a younger running back. And so, with that being said, I think this offense has gotten more dynamic and has been built more with, being centered for Justin Fields. So it'll be interesting to see if, with all that's been done for him in the offseason, if he's going to be able to take it up to that next step. Um, it'll be really interesting to see, because that division is a lot more open now that Aaron Rodgers is out of it. So it's going to be really put on Justin Fields and that offense to see if they can take that step up and possibly win the division. So with that being said, I do think that Justin Fields is young and dynamic. He hasn't proved that he's a baller for sure because, the one reason why I wouldn't put him up here with Daniel Jones and with the rest of these guys is, they haven't Justin Fields hasn't necessarily took his team to the playoffs yet. And I can't remember. I believe I want to say Derek Carr has been to the playoffs. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think that even Derek Carr is a better ball thrower and a better decision maker than Justin Fields is. And you can credit that to him having better weapons than Justin Fields has so far in his career. However, I am going to put Justin Fields in average. That's not to say though that he can't move up, guys. Like, I know that me putting him in average with the rest of these guys, it makes him look very, very bad. However, it's just the Bears haven't had a lot of success with him yet. And if they end up balling out this year, I very much agree with you guys that Justin Fields could be in baller for sure, or even in elite, depending on how good of a season he has. So don't hate me or don't shoot the messenger for me putting him in average for now. Average doesn't necessarily mean he's terrible or should be out of the league. It just means that he hasn't quite yet proven himself, and I hope he proves himself. I like seeing young, talented quarterbacks in the NFL. I think it makes the NFL better. It makes it more fun. And so with that being said, I'm going to put Justin Fields in tier 3. Alrighty, next on this list, guys, we have Geno Smith. And for those of you who watched my first NFL tiers video, you guys will know I am a Seahawks fan. I'm a big Seahawks fan. I've been a Seahawks fan for years. I mean, obviously when we had Russell Wilson and Legion of Boom, but even before that, when it was Matt Hasselbeck and Sean Alexander and all of them, I mean, that puts me, I was pretty young when Matt Hasselbeck and Sean Alexander were doing their thing. But nonetheless, I'm a huge Seahawks fan. Geno Smith got his first year starting last year and absolutely ran off with it. I mean, just had an absolute killer of a year, ended up making it to the Pro Bowl, and was just absolutely killing it. I mean, I have to go back and look at his stats, but I know he threw 30-plus touchdowns, had fewer than 15 interceptions. Like, guy showed that he can be a baller and that he can for sure be a starter in this league. And it's kind of crazy because, he had his start with the Jets where, it didn't really go as everyone, was hoping. I mean, he was also battling though with Mark Sanchez at the time. So he ended up, after leaving the Jets, going to a bunch of teams and being the backup for a bunch of teams. And, obviously with my Seahawks getting rid of Russell Wilson and moving on, it was kind of a toss-up on whether or not the backup Geno Smith was going to start or, the guy that we picked up from the Broncos, Drew Lock, was going to start. It was a QB battle in the preseason, and Geno Smith just ended up taking over and winning, and from there on out, he ran off with it last year. So I believe Geno Smith finished the league last year with the highest completion percentage in the league. The thing that is hard about placing Geno in a tier is that he only had this one good year last year. And I'll be honest with you guys, this list more so is kind of me mixing my thoughts based off of how they did last year and how I think they're gonna do this upcoming year. And oh man, it's tough, especially for me with Geno Smith because obviously, like I said, I'm a Seahawks fan, so I'm a little bit biased. But I'll be honest with you guys, I think that Geno Smith belongs up here with Baller for sure. And like I said, I know there's gonna be a bunch of people that hate on me putting Justin Fields down here, and especially now that I'm putting Geno Smith and Daniel Jones above him. But with the weapons that we have over there in Seattle, I mean, with not only just DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. We went and drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, we have Noah Fant. We got Will Disley. We got our running back core with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet. And then I mean, our O line is just getting better and better. Like, what's to say that Geno Smith can't have another baller year? I mean, I know he has to go out there and prove it, but I mean, I think the Seahawks paid him for a reason, and they believe that he can do it again. So, with that being said, guys, don't shoot the messenger. Like I said, I'm gonna put Geno Smith in baller for sure. And you guys are more than welcome down below in the comments to let me know what are guys that should be moved up a tier, moved down a tier. Like, what guys am I, being crazy about or not being crazy enough about? So, with that being said, though, guys, I'm going to put Geno Smith in baller for sure, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next guy. Alrighty, guys, next on this list, we have Jared Goff. And, Jared Goff is another interesting case because he gets drafted very high by the Rams, ends up having a very terrible year with Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher gets fired, Sean McVay comes in, and then he kind of, has an interesting career the rest of the way with the Rams to where, like, he has these highs and he has these lows where it's like, he has the highs of going to the Super Bowl, with the Rams, but then he has the lows of, well, you know, is he good enough to get the job done? Is he good enough to win you playoff games and win the Super Bowl for you? And I believe that Super Bowl with where the Rams, it was the Rams and the Patriots, I believe. I believe it was one of the lowest scoring Super Bowls of all time, and that just was not a great look for Jared Goff. And so I think that tainted his image a lot, enough to where Sean McVay was pretty much like, yeah, we need to get Jared Goff out of here, so let's go ahead and trade him out. And it actually made one of the most fair trades, in my opinion, where we saw Jared Goff and Matt Stafford get traded, basically one for one. I'm pretty sure there's actually a first round pick also involved in that, or a couple. I'm gonna have to go back and look. My memory kind of fogs me with that trade. But however, the reason why I said it was kind of fair is because like Matt Stafford got to get out, away from the Lions, which he had been struggling with for years. I mean, that guy had been balling out over there, trying his ass off, but just never really had help from the rest of the franchise. Gets to go to the Rams, where he still gets to show that he has these elite qualities about him and gets to play for a team in a system that has been successful as of lately, especially in the offensive category with Sean McVay. And then they go out and obviously with Matt Stafford's first year on the Rams, he goes and wins the Super Bowl. But I mean, that team was just stacked and loaded. I mean, you don't trade away all your picks for these top tier guys and essentially not be successful. You know what I mean? I mean, it happens, but that was the key reason why the Rams won that Super Bowl is because they got rid of all their picks and got the guys they needed to go out there and win. So with that being said, though, bringing it back to Jared Goff, he ends up going obviously to the Lions, and ever since they got Dan Campbell as a coach, I mean, I think Jared Goff has been very underrated over there. I think the guy has been done nothing but balled out over there to the point where it was like last year, yeah, did they start off the season, rough where they lost a bunch of games? Yes, but in that second half of the season, as many of you know, the Lions flipped a switch, man, and they were looking dominant going into the end of that season to the point where in that last game of the regular season, they end up playing Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And if the Packers would have won, Packers are in the playoffs and Aaron Rodgers is in the playoffs. But the Lions were like, hell no, you're not going to the playoffs. And they end up upsetting them and they end up winning, like, I want to say almost 8 games in the second half of the season, something like crazy like that. And so with that being said, I think Jared Goff has a lot more potential and a lot more skills than what people give him credit for. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and put Jared Goff in baller for sure. I know he's only done, had a couple good seasons. However, I think he is above average. I mean that's my opinion on the guy. I don't think he's below average. We'll see how he does again. This coming up year because I mean Lions went ahead and drafted a quarterback in this last draft. I believe they drafted Hendon Hooker. So it was kind of a nip in the ass for Jared Goff that was like, hey, man, you got to continue to show us that you're going to be our guy. Or we got this guy, Hendon Hooker, that we just drafted that is supposed to be a very, high potential draft pick. And so, with that being said, I do think that Jared Goff has the capability of being a baller and winning games for his team. It'll just be a matter of him being able to be consistent with it and to continue to prove it. And I think he will. I mean, the Lions overall have a lot of good pieces on their team. And I mean, if everyone can stay healthy and, not get in trouble by betting, who I'm talking about on that offense, I think they can have a lot of success, especially now, like I said, with Justin Fields. Aaron Rodgers is out of that division. And so, I mean, that division's really just up for grabs. So, like I said, Jared Goff, baller for sure. And let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have Taylor Heineke. And man, I like Taylor Heineke. Don't get me wrong. He has shown that he can be a guy that is dynamic, and I want to say that he can win you games, but it was tough because he was on Washington, and he did all right on Washington. I believe it was the Washington had went and got Carson Wentz, and Wentz went down with an injury, and I believe it was Taylor Heineke that started most of those games after that. And I want to say he did all right. I mean, I think what the Washington Commanders ended up winning like 8 games or so last year, something like that. And I think they went 8-1 if I remember correctly, because I think they were one of the teams that tied. And so basically, what I'm getting at is I think Tyler Heineke has skills, but I don't think Tyler Heineke is necessarily a starter or a starting caliber quarterback. I think he's one of the greatest backups in the league, and that actually does say quite a bit. Because there are terrible backups out there. There's straight up, teams out there that if their starting quarterback gets injured, their next guy up is terrible, and they're basically done for. You know what I mean? Unless they have a lot of good pieces around them and just an overall good system. However, like I said, Taylor Heineke, I don't think is starting caliber, but I think he, like I said, is a really, 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 really good backup. So with that being said, he's gonna be my first quarterback that I put in shouldn't start. However, I think, I'm pretty sure the Falcons signed him to be Ritter's backup. So, I mean, if for some reason Ritter gets injured or just ends up not being the guy and they decide to put Heineke in and he balls out, he could definitely move up to average or baller. Probably not baller. I don't see him having that great of a season, but the Falcons do have a decent offense. They have a lot of young pieces, this coming up year. But with that being said, I mean, I think he's a backup for a reason, and I think he continues to stay a backup for a reason. So, with that being said, I'm going to put him in shouldn't start, and let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, guys, we have Justin Herbert, and man, Justin Herbert is just one of the guys. And when I say that, I mean, talk about a team that has also kind of been struggling the past few years. I mean, ever since essentially Philip Rivers left the Chargers, which I forget what year that was. I'd have to go back and look. But even when they had Philip Rivers, they had some really, really good years, right? Where they end up making it to the playoffs, but they just, can't quite get it done with Rivers. And then obviously they move off from Rivers, or however that went down. Rivers is not on the team anymore. They need their next franchise quarterback. And lo and behold, they ended up being able to land Justin Herbert, who a lot of people knew that he was going to be a good player coming out of the draft. However, they weren't sure if he was going to be, capable of being elite or whatever. But with that being said, Chargers ended up drafting him very early in the first round a couple years ago in the draft. And ever since then, I mean, the Chargers haven't looked back. I mean, Herbert has been killing it for them. And I think a large part of the reason why Herbert hasn't had as much success, especially in the playoffs, as, a lot of people would want him to, is for a couple reasons. One being that he's in the same division as Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I'm sorry, I mean, the Chiefs have been the top dogs in the NFL for pretty much like about 5 years or so now. So that makes it really tough on another team in that division to have a lot of success like that. Although the Chargers do give the Chiefs the most fits whenever they play against each other. However, another reason why we haven't really seen as much out of Herbert as we'd like is because the rest of the team, or not necessarily the rest of the team, but the rest of the franchise, as far as like they haven't necessarily got the right GM down, maybe, or they haven't necessarily got the right head coach down. I think a lot of it does have to do with the head coach and Brandon Staley. It'll be very interesting to see if the Chargers don't have another good year, if, Brandon Staley is, going to stay there or not. I do think it helps them a lot that they got the offensive coordinator from the Cowboys, Kellen Moore. I think that'll kind of play more into Herbert's abilities. And another thing that has kind of hindered Herbert in his career is a lot of the guys on his team end up just getting injured, man. Like, I mean, in last year I remember in fantasy, this is the main reason why I remember this is uh what's his name? Keenan Allen was injured for majority of last year, and a lot of people picked him up like in fantasy thinking like, okay, yeah, he's got Herbert, he's gonna have a baller year, but Keenan Allen was injured for a large chunk of last year. I believe Mike Williams was injured for a decent part of last year. So it's like that right there alone, your number one and your number two are injured. Like, you're not going to have as much success without having your top tier guys around you. Like, you need your team to be healthy in order to be completely successful. As well as, I'm pretty sure Herbert's one of his best offensive linemen was injured all of last year too, or at least a majority of last year. So injuries and stuff have kind of plagued Herbert in his career, but nonetheless, with all of that being said, guys, I do think that Herbert belongs up here in the elite group. I think he is very capable of winning his team games and leading his team to the playoffs, and not only leading his team to the playoffs, but if they can have everything going for them, no injuries and whatnot, and good matchups, I think they can win games in the playoffs. So with that being said, Herbert definitely belongs in elite group tier one for me. And with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list we have Hendon Hooker, and don't have a lot to really say about him because obviously he was just drafted. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and already place him in rookie or hasn't played yet. I think that the Lions, like I said, when I talked about Jared Goff, I think the Lions drafted him as kind of almost like a way to nib Jared Goff in the ass and basically say, like, hey, man, we got this talented, guy that's, waiting, as the backup. If you don't basically show us what you're capable of and show us that you can really be our franchise guy, then we're going to let this kid, get a shot at it. And so, with that being said, I know that Hendon Hooker had a lot of success in college before he ended up getting injured. And if he wouldn't have ended up getting injured, I believe he was going to be a first round pick. But with that being said, he ends up getting injured, ends up falling in the draft. And so, with that being said, I think if he gets a chance to start, say Jared Goff just ends up playing terrible, they end up putting him in. I think Hendon Hooker could be capable of doing a lot. From what I've heard, he's very athletic. He's got a cannon of an arm. So, all of it is yet to be seen, but I do think that he has a high ceiling if given the chance. However, like I said, we have, he's a rookie or we haven't seen him play yet, so he belongs down here in this category. With that being said, let's go on and move on to the next one. Alrighty, next on this list we have Sam Howell, and kind of like I just talked about with Hendon Hooker, we haven't really seen a lot from Sam Howell. I mean, I know that Sam Howell was drafted not in this last draft, but the draft before that. However, he didn't get a chance to start because they had Carson Wentz, and then obviously Carson Wentz got injured, and then they had Taylor Heineke, and then I believe it was like the last 2 games or so of the season, Sam Howell got a chance to play, and I believe I saw the stat line before of the 2 games that he started, and they weren't great, but they weren't terrible. I think Sam Howell is one of those quarterbacks that's going to go in this tier, just like these guys, where it's like he wasn't a rookie, but we just haven't really seen him play a whole lot, And I know he's going to start this year for the Commanders, and they have a lot of high praise for him and a lot of high hopes for him. However, it's yet to be seen, and so I mean, I think he does have potential, but the only thing is man, that's not only is that a hard division to be in right now with the Eagles and the Cowboys, Giants made the playoffs as well. Like, man, I don't know. I think the Commanders don't really have a lot going for them other than Terry McLaurin. I mean, I know a lot of people are high on what's his name, Jahan Dotson or whatever. But other than that, I mean, their defense is pretty good, but it's yet to be seen yet. So with that being said, we're going to leave him in rookie or hasn't played yet. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list, we have Jalen Hurts, the other half of the quarterback that was in the Super Bowl. Man, Jalen Hurts really, really just had a breakout year last year, enough of, to the point where he ended up getting paid. And I think a lot of people, you know, thought that Jalen Hurts had this in him. It was just a matter of him going out there, being confident and playing to his ability and his skills. I mean, on top of that, I mean, I'm pretty sure last year almost everyone would consider that the Eagles had the best offensive line and borderline could have also had the best defensive line. That's to be debated. However, just overall, the Eagles had a lot of pieces around Jalen Hurts last year, and I mean, not only that though, Jalen Hurts showed that he can be a dominant runner with the ball, and I think he also showed that he can also be a dynamic thrower of the football. So, I mean, in that Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure, if I've seen the sources correctly and the stat line correctly, he had one of the best stat lines in the Super Bowl while losing. So, I believe he had like 300 plus passing yards, like 70 plus rushing yards, like 3 rushing TDs, 1 passing TD. Like the guy is a straight up baller, man. And if he stays with the Eagles and is just consistent, he's going to be a good quarterback for the years to come. And so, with that being said, I do believe that Jalen Hurts belongs up here in the elite group of quarterbacks. I mean, guy can play. Guy can play. He's a solid starter, and I think he can win his team NFL games and can lead his team in the playoffs like he did last year. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, guys, we have Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jimmy, man, he is an interesting guy to talk about just because it's like goes from being the backup for Tom Brady for a couple years, right? So he gets to see and learn what it's like to be on not only a successful franchise, but to sit behind obviously the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. And then Tom Brady basically, from what I've heard, gets him shipped out of town, ends up going to the Niners with Kyle Shanahan. And, for the most part, when he was healthy, he took his team to the Super Bowl that year that I believe he stayed healthy the whole year. I think if the guy is in the right system with the right players, he can truly get the job done. However, I don't think on a terrible franchise or a borderline bad franchise, he can lead that team to like this per se the playoffs. But with that being said, I don't think he's a terrible quarterback. I think he belongs to be here with the average quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see if he can stay healthy with the Raiders all this coming up year. He's got Devontae Adams, he's got Hunter Renfro. They lost Darren Waller. They got, Josh Jacobs. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes. So I think if he stays healthy, he can have a pretty good offense with the Raiders. I mean, I'm pretty sure their O line's not great, so that might kind of be hard for him. But like I say, he's got Devontae Adams. I mean, we will see if he can get it done with the Raiders and if he can stay healthy. I think the biggest thing that has always gone against Jimmy Garoppolo is just the fact that he can't stay healthy. Excuse me. Overall, though, I think that he is an average quarterback, not better than the guys that are up here above him, but not worse than Heineke or these other rookies that we haven't really gotten to see from. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have Kirk Cousins. And I don't know if a lot of you guys who are watching this video watched that documentary that was put on Netflix, the quarterback one, but we got to kind of learn a lot about Kirk Cousins that we might not have necessarily known before last year, unless you're a Vikings fan. And in my opinion, the documentary showed what kind of level of quarterback that Kirk Cousins is, and kind of opened my eyes more so to him. I always thought that he was more so just average, but I really do think that after last year that Kirk Cousins has put himself in the baller for sure category. I mean, I've seen a couple stat lines of his over the past couple of years, and the guy has shown that he's pretty consistent for the most part. I mean, even when he was on Washington, he wasn't a bad quarterback. I mean, I'm pretty sure he took Washington to the playoffs a time or two before. And, obviously the Vikings have gone to the playoffs a couple times with him. So with that being said, I mean, I know that he takes them to the playoffs. They're just not able to quite get the job done for whatever reason. And so with that being said, I do think that Kirk Cousins is a baller for sure. He is not, equal or worse than any of these guys that are in this tier. He's definitely better than these guys. So with that being said, I think it fits for him to be up here with the rest of these guys. And I mean, he's got Justin Jefferson as one of his targets, you know what I mean? And Justin Jefferson's arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, has kind of showed it for the past couple seasons. So with that being said, I think that helps Kirk Cousins out a lot. But even then, I do think that he is a good decision maker. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks throw picks, guys. I mean, like I said, you got Josh Allen up here, who's considered elite, but he has some of the most turnovers over the past couple seasons. So it's like, shit happens in NFL games. It's a high stress position, but overall, I think what it comes down to is your consistency. And I think Kirk Cousins is a very consistent quarterback. So, with that being said, I'm going to keep him up here in baller for sure. And we're going to move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list, we have Kyler Murray. And man, Kyler Murray is kind of a tough one to talk about, especially after last year. I mean, the Cardinals weren't having a great season last year, even up till the point where he got injured. And man, it's gonna be really tough for Kyler Murray in these next couple of years. It's gonna be kind of interesting to see where his career continues, with after his ACL injury. Excuse me. But I think Kyler Murray, I think he is a very dynamic quarterback in the sense that obviously he can run the ball. He's a very fast quarterback. But he also is a decent passer of the ball. It's tough, man, because I mean, I know he got paid, but the thing is like he went to a poverty franchise in the Arizona Cardinals who haven't seen really like a huge amount of success in years since they went on that playoff run a few years ago with believe that was Carson Palmer, I want to say. But even then, since they've had Murray, I think they've only made the playoffs maybe a time or two, and even then, I believe they were one and done in the playoffs. So with that being said, I think Kyler Murray has a lot of potential and can be a baller for sure. However, last season he didn't really show it, and to be honest with you guys, after he comes back from this ACL injury, I just am not gonna. I don't see it. Like I don't see him having that success. So as of now, guys, I'll be honest with you, he's going an average for me. So, I mean, you guys can let me know down below in the comments if you guys think I'm being too harsh on him or if I'm not being harsh enough. But with that being said, I do think he belongs in average. And to be honest with you guys, I know that I should probably have a tier here that's in between average and shouldn't start. I mean, I know there's a lot of guys that are below average, but they definitely should start in the league. However, it's just a lot of these guys are, if they're put like all these quarterbacks that are right here in tier 3, if they're put in the right situation, have a chance to be successful. So I mean, like I said, Kyler Murray, if he's healthy and he has a decent cast of weapons around him, a decent O-line, like he could be successful, you know what I mean? Like take Kyler Murray and put him, on the Eagles per se, like, with Jalen Hurts. I mean, they're very similar style quarterbacks, so it's like I can see the success going, either way. So with that being said, though, being in the situation that he's in, I just don't see him being any better than average. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, guys, we have Lamar Jackson. And man, Lamar Jackson is a specimen of a quarterback. Let me tell you, I mean, the guy is probably the best running quarterback that we've seen in the league since Michael Vick. And I mean, he proved that in 2019 when he won his unanimous MVP. I mean, he's taken his team to the playoffs. He's won a playoff game now. That was kind of the biggest detriment to him was people were saying, oh, well, he hasn't won a playoff game yet. So, I mean, he has done that now, though. The biggest thing with Lamar Jackson is whether or not he can stay healthy for a full season. When he stays healthy, though, for a full season, he always generally has a pretty good year, and the Ravens usually make the playoffs. And on top of that, he got paid in the offseason, so he's got to, have a lot to prove, in this coming up season. And on top of that, the Ravens went out and got more weapons for him. They went and got OBJ. They went ahead and drafted him a wide receiver in the first round. And on top of that, he already had Mark Andrews, who's arguably one of the best tight ends in the league. And on top of that, they already had Rashawn Bateman. So with that being all said, I do think that Lamar Jackson is going to be very capable of having an elite season next year. And in my opinion, guys, you guys might not like me for this. You guys might think I'm being too high on him. I think he belongs up here in the elite group. I think the guy is very, very, very dynamic, and if he can improve even just in the slightest bit on his passing game, the guy's going to have a lot of success in the league this coming up year. So, with that being said, I do think he belongs in the elite tier. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next guy on this list, we don't have a lot to talk about. It's Will Levis, or however you say his name, got drafted to the Tennessee Titans, and I believe the second or third round, something like that. Don't know very much about him other than, he had decent stats in college, has a decent arm. Obviously, like I said, he just got drafted, so we haven't seen very much of him. So that being said, we're gonna keep him in the rookie year. Hasn't played yet. We very much could see him start this coming up year. Maybe not right away at the beginning of the season, just because they still have Ryan Tannehill, and I think they still want to see what Ryan Tannehill has left in him. However, I just don't think the Tennessee Titans have a very good supporting cast around their quarterbacks. And so, with that being said, we very much could see Will Levis in this next year starting, but it's yet to be seen. So, with that being said, he's going to stay in the rookie year hasn't played. Alrighty, next on this list we have Jordan Love, and Jordan Love also belongs down here in the rookie year hasn't played yet, just because I mean I know he's been in the league for a few years now, or a couple years, however long, but he's been the backup behind Aaron Rodgers the whole entire time. I mean I know he's came in a couple games and kind of has showed a little bit of himself. However, I wouldn't say it's enough to truly define like what level of quarterback that he is, in the league. So with that being said, I'm putting him in rookie year hasn't played. Could potentially ball out this year, could not. So with that being said, we'll kind of see where he goes this next season and how good he plays. And with that being said, we're gonna put him in the rookie year hasn't played yet tier. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list we have Mac Jones. And man, Mac Jones is just in a really tough situation because I mean he is considered the next franchise quarterback that has obviously came in after Tom Brady, left, and Tom Brady had that dynamic dynasty for 20 years or so. And so it was going to be tough for whatever quarterback came into the Patriots locker room after Tom Brady as the franchise guy. However, being that Bill Belichick is still the coach of that team, I think Bill Belichick tries to put too much on his plate as far as like trying to prove that he's the reason why the Patriots have had all this success over the years. And he doesn't like I think that Bill Belichick is a very, very, very great defensive mind, arguably the best that we've ever had. However, as far as Bill Belichick, the GM, I'll be honest with you guys, Bill Belichick has been shit. I mean, when is the last time that Bill Belichick went out and drafted a offensive weapon that has been considered, a top tier guy or even a great weapon in the league, like it's part of the reason why their offense hasn't been as dynamic as it should be. And it really has been kind of the reason why the Patriots have taken, a step back or a few steps back in the league ever since Tom Brady left is they don't do enough to make sure that their offense can keep up with everybody else's in the league. Granted, like I said, their defenses have always been really good. I mean, even the past couple of years, their defenses have been great, with Judon and the rest of the guys that they have in that core. However, their offense just hasn't been built enough around Mac Jones in order for him to be considered, good or elite in this league. And we'll see if with Juju and with Kaseki if that helps him, take that step up as a quarterback. But to be honest with you guys, as of right now, Mac Jones is average. He's not better than average, not a baller, not elite, but he definitely deserves, obviously, to be a starter in this league. And so, with that being said, we'll see how he does this year, but he's definitely belongs here in tier 3 average. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list, we have one of the easiest ones. I mean, without really having to say anything, we can go ahead and put Patrick Mahomes in top dog. I mean, there really is only one reason why the top dog tier exists, and that is because Patrick Mahomes has not only been elite these past few years, but he's borderline been the best quarterback in the league for the past few years. I mean, I believe it's what 3 out of the 5 years that he's been the starter in the league, he's made it to the Super Bowl, and 2 out of those 3 times he's been in the Super Bowl, he's won the Super Bowl. So, I mean, the guy is just doing things at a rate that no other quarterback has done before, to the point where people are already wanting to say, is he going to be, the next GOAT of the NFL? Is he going to be the guy that can actually, keep up with, the stats of Tom Brady and whatnot, who obviously Tom Brady is considered the GOAT. So I think with all that being said, Patrick Mahomes definitely deserves to be considered the best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he's proved it not just 1 year, but multiple years. And, I mean, the guy just finds ways to get better and get better. I mean, they lose Tyreek Hill last year and end up having a better offense this last year than they had when they had Tyreek Hill. So, I mean, having Andy Reid as your head coach definitely helps. I mean, I think Andy Reid is starting to prove himself to be one of the best coaches of all time, if not the best. I mean, I know we still have Bill Belichick to talk about, but definitely when it comes to offensive-minded head coach, you cannot not put Andy Reid in the best of the best of all time when it comes to offenses. With also that being said, Travis Kelsey has tremendously helped Patrick Mahomes' career. I mean, I think a lot of people can arguably already say that Travis Kelsey is not maybe necessarily the best tight end of all time, but he's definitely in the conversation of best tight ends of all time, up there with like Gronk and Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, and all those guys. He's definitely for sure a Hall of Famer. So, with that being said, I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on Patrick Mahomes. I think that he is the best quarterback in the league right now, and that's why he belongs solely by himself in top dog when it comes to quarterbacks in the NFL. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list, we have Matt Ryan, and to be honest with you guys, I didn't even realize that Matt Ryan was still in the league. I mean, I know he had a post where he said, "Oh, I haven't officially retired yet, guys. Like, don't count me out." But I'm sorry. I mean, the guy is looking like his age, and it's really unfortunate because even when he was on the Falcons his last couple seasons, I mean, the season where the Falcons went to the Super Bowl against the Patriots, guy was an MVP. I mean, like, I know that that might be kind of hard to remember, but guy was literally playing at an MVP level at one point, and it just sucks to see after how he played for the Colts and just the kind of condition that he looked like. I mean, I'm sorry, guy looks stiff as a board, man, has no mobility, and it's just I don't know if he can make the throws anymore, and so it's really unfortunate to say this, but I just don't think that Matt Ryan is a starting quarterback in this league anymore. As unfortunate as it sounds, like I'd rather have Taylor Heineke over Matt Ryan, and that's crazy to say, considering like I said that Matt Ryan was literally an MVP not too long ago, a few years ago. So that being said, it is unfortunate, but Matt Ryan just shouldn't start in the league anymore, and he belongs in this tier. So that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list, we have Davis Mills. Um, Man, this is this is a tough one, man. Because I mean, I think the only reason he really even got a chance to start was because he was playing for such a bad team in the Texans last year. Other than that, I don't think you ever see this guy really start. I mean, I know he had some good talks of him coming out of college, but I'm sorry, Davis Mills. After they drafted CJ Stroud, it's tough to say that this guy's going to get another starting job again. So, with that being said, I think Davis Mills belongs and shouldn't start. I mean, I know he had a decent season, but obviously it wasn't great or good enough for them to want to continue with him. I know a new regimen came in as far as new coaches and whatnot, and they kind of want to go and get their guy. But when a guy's good enough, even if there's a new regimen that comes in, they still try to give the guy, if he's good enough, a chance. And I don't think they're even were willing to give Davis Mills a chance. So, with that being said, I think Davis Mills belongs and shouldn't start. I could be proven wrong if he ends up getting a chance again, or if he goes to another team and balls out. But with that being said, Davis Mills just shouldn't start. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next quarterback on the list is Kenny Pickett. And I'll be honest with you guys, I actually really liked Kenny Pickett in his season that he had last year. I mean, obviously it wasn't elite, it wasn't baller, but I do think that he belongs in the average tier list. However, hold up, however, if he has a good year with the Steelers this next year, he for sure 100% belongs in baller for sure. I mean, I see Kenny Two Gloves as getting better in this league. You know what I mean? Like I think they're building a good enough core and system around him for him to be successful. And I mean, Mike Tomlin just is always one of those guys in the league that figures out a way to make things work. I mean, he made Big Ben work even till almost the end of his career when he was playing in his late 30s. So, with that being said, I think that Kenny Pickett does belong in the average tier right now. I mean, he had an average season last year, wasn't great, wasn't terrible. You know, I think in my opinion, he should have gotten the start from the beginning. I don't think Mitch Trubisky should have gotten the start over him. But with that being said, Kenny Pickett has showed that if he can have another good year, or he can have a good year on top of what he did last year, that he definitely is the franchise quarterback and can be a baller for sure, depending on how this next season goes. So with that being said, we're keeping him tier 3 and keeping him in average, and let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list, we have Brock Purdy, and I know this one's going to be maybe somewhat of a hot take. He borderline almost could belong in this rookie year, hasn't played yet. However, he did play a bunch of games. I mean, as soon as Trey Lance went down, then Jimmy G came in, and then Jimmy G went down. It was Mr. Irrelevant's time to shine. And he did just that. He shined. Don't get me wrong. He definitely shined in the games that he played, and even up into the playoffs when he played against my Seahawks and he beat us. He was playing great. I mean, what was it, up until what was that, the NFC Championship against the Eagles, that he gets injured, and obviously the 49ers end up losing. However, I will say that I very much think that Brock Purdy is a product of the system in the sense that they have a lot of great players around him. I mean, you got Debo Samuel, you got Christian McCaffrey, you got George Kittle, you got Brandon Ayuk, you got a solid offensive line. I mean, you got Kyle Juszczyk, and I mean, on top of that, you have one of the best defenses in the league. So it's like when you have one of the best defenses in the league, you're not asked to do a whole lot on offense other than to just not give the ball away. And Brock Purdy has showed that he's pretty good at not giving the ball away and getting it to the great weapons that they have. However, I wouldn't necessarily say that he's a baller. I think he is average as of right now. I think Kenny Pickett and Brock Purdy are in very similar situations where it's like they need to go out and prove it this next year. And if they end up proving it, like they very much, like they very well could, I think that they move up to baller for sure. Like I think that I mean, both of these two borderline, if they have great years where they take their teams to the playoffs and they have deep playoff runs, they could very well move up to the elite group. Like I think that's very well possible. I think even if both of these guys even just take their teams to the playoffs and they're one and done in the playoffs, they move up to baller for sure. It's just we need to see the consistency for a little bit longer. We need to see it for another year, like I said. So for now, 49ers and Steelers fans, don't hate me. Don't hate me after watching this video. Put down in the comments what you guys think, if you guys agree with me or disagree with me. But for now, keep them in average. I definitely think out of all of the quarterbacks in these tiers, they have the highest chance of moving up. It's very, very likely. I mean, some of these guys after this year might not even be considered guys that can start in this league. I think that's very likely for some of these guys. However, these two guys here at the end, I think have the highest chance, like I've said, to move up and to have success in this league. And with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list we have Anthony Richardson. Got drafted to the Colts. We don't know anything about him. Rookie. Has a high athletic ceiling. We'll see if he can, throw the ball good. Like I said, it's yet to be seen, so we're going to keep him in the rookie year. Hasn't played yet, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have a very similar situation to Sam Howell in the sense that we have Desmond Ridder. He didn't play very much last year, considering the fact that they had Marcus Mariota, but when Marcus Mariota ended up not panning out, they put in Desmond Ridder. I just don't think we have seen enough of Desmond Ridder to really, uh, you know, define where he belongs in the league as far as his skill set and his potential, and just what kind of quarterback he is in this league. However, I think that the Falcons have done a good job at building an offense that has a lot of young studs on it. I mean, with Kyle Pitts, you got Drake London. They drafted Bijan Robinson. I mean, if Ritter can just play good or average, I think the Falcons can end up having a lot of success. However, just like the other quarterbacks in this tier, it's yet to be seen. So, with that being said, we're going to leave him here. We're going to move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, guys, we have Aaron Rodgers. And although Aaron Rodgers didn't have the year that I think everyone thought that he would last year, I don't think that's all necessarily his fault. I mean, after losing Devontae Adams, I mean, he just didn't really have good weapons. I mean, I know Christian Watson started to kind of come into his own later on in the season and started becoming a really good player, but that offense just didn't have a lot going for it other than literally their run game, Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Nonetheless, I think that Aaron Rodgers on the Jets team is going to see more success than what he had last year. And if you think about it, I mean, the year before last year, Aaron Rodgers had won 2 MVPs in a row before that. So I think Aaron Rodgers very much still has what it takes to be an elite quarterback in this league. It's just he's to the point where he doesn't necessarily need a great system around him, but he definitely just he needs wide receivers that are capable. Not necessarily good or great, but are capable. And I think you started to kind of see that near the end of the year last year with the Packers. They just couldn't necessarily get the job done. And so, with that being said, I still, in my opinion, think that Aaron Rodgers is an elite quarterback in this league. And, we'll see how it goes with his Jets this next season, but I still think he's capable of a lot of success. I think he's capable to take his team to the playoffs, and I think he's capable of winning playoff games. So, with that being said, I'm going to leave him here in the elite group, and let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, guys. Next on this list is Russell Wilson, and talking about Russell Wilson is kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, considering that, like I said earlier, I am a Seahawks fan. He was the guy on the Seahawks for a while that led us to success. I mean, it wasn't necessarily all on him. I mean, when you have the Legion of Boom, one of the greatest defenses of all time, you're going to have success. And not only, on top of that, we had one of the greatest running backs of all time in Marshawn Lynch. But nonetheless, Russell Wilson didn't screw things up for us. And so we ended up having a lot of success with him. Then he leaves us, and even in his last year with the Seahawks, he wasn't that great. I mean, he was good. He was still definitely good. Like, he was a good quarterback in the league. But then he leaves us and goes to the Broncos and has arguably one of the worst seasons of a quarterback. And you can put some of that blame on Hackett and the fact that maybe Hackett doesn't deserve to be a head coach in the league, but a lot of that also is Russell Wilson. And I think a huge chunk of it is not necessarily that Russell Wilson doesn't have the playing ability anymore. It's kind of his personality. I mean, his personality has really flipped over the years. I mean, the guy came into the league as this humble, what was that, third round pick, and just was happy to be in the NFL, happy that a team was willing to take a chance on him and was willing to let him prove that he is a capable quarterback. And then he ends up getting, I believe, what was it, his second or third contract with the Seahawks. He starts, calling himself Mr. Unlimited. Then, he starts calling himself Dangerous. And I mean, he goes to the Broncos and he's got his own parking spot. He's got his own office. I mean, he's got this group of personal trainers all around him, and his agents and whatnot, like multiple agents. And it's just the guy has almost turned heel, and I don't know if he's doing it on purpose or if he's even really realized that he's done it. I think he's realized that he's done it after last season with the Broncos. What I think he's started to realize what was going on around him. But with that being said, I think with Sean Payton, I think Russ is going to show that he can still play in this league. It's just he's definitely at one point, I'll be honest with you guys, Russell Wilson was an elite quarterback in this league. He definitely was. Like, guy was borderline MVP almost every single year, even though he never received an MVP vote. But with that being said, last year he had a average to below average year where he almost shouldn't have even started. However, I'm not going to put one bad season and totally just say that he shouldn't start anymore. He's average. I think Russell Wilson can very much still be a baller in this league and very much still can win games for him. Even though I don't like Russell Wilson anymore, that's just me talking as a sports fan and as a Seahawks fan. I still, though, as a non-biased fan of the NFL, think that he can still ball out. And we'll see if he can do it with Sean Payton and the guys that they've got on that roster. So with that being said, I'm going to leave him in baller for sure. But it's yet to be seen if that'll happen next year. So with that being said, we're going to leave him in baller and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, guys, we have Matthew Stafford. And I mean, Matthew Stafford had won the Super Bowl just a couple years ago. I mean, I think people have seen that Matt Stafford is still a guy in this league. However, last year he was dealing with injuries, and so that didn't help. And then Cooper Kupp went down, and you know, the Rams are in a really tough, weird situation. Like they won the Super Bowl, but they, like I said earlier, gave up all of their draft picks, and so it's going to be really interesting to see if Matt Stafford now after the Super Bowl is still capable of being a top tier guy or even a baller. Um, Borderline, I want to put Matt Stafford in average. However, after he won a Super Bowl in the last couple of years. I still think if he has Cooper Kupp, he's capable of being a baller and winning games. So that being said, he's also still has Sean McVay as his head coach, which I think is very good, a very good offensive mind. And I think that if Stafford can stay healthy, Kupp can stay healthy, I think Sean McVay can build an offense around those guys and still have some sort of success. And we'll just kind of have to see. But with that being said, I think that Stafford is still a baller. He's still better than all of these guys that are in this list. And we'll see what happens this next year. With that being said, though, we're gonna leave him a baller for sure and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list we have CJ Stroud, and this is gonna be a quick one. I'm just gonna breeze through it. He's a rookie. We haven't seen anything of him in the NFL. We'll see how he does with the Texans. And with that being said, we're gonna leave him in rookie or hasn't played and move on to the next quarterback. Next on this list we have Ryan Tannehill, and this is gonna be a hot take, guys. For those of you that are Titans fans, let me know what you guys think of this. But from what I've seen over the past few years, and obviously it's been with the Titans, and the Titans haven't had any good weapons outside of they had AJ Brown obviously until last year. They have Derrick Henry, but he's a running back, so he doesn't really have a whole lot to do with Tannehill. I think Tannehill, though, is at the point in his career where he just shouldn't start anymore. I mean, that's just my opinion, guys. I think Tannehill can be one of the best, maybe backups there is in the league, but my opinion, he's not even as old as Matt Ryan, but he's almost at a Matt Ryan stage in his career where it's like these guys at one point could ball out, but they're not there anymore. And maybe if the Titans had better offensive weapons, uh, you know, Tannehill can still be considered an average or above average guy, but with what is on that team right now and the way that Tannehill has played the last couple seasons, I just almost borderline don't think that he should even be a starter in this league anymore. And when that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have Trevor Lawrence. And man, this is a tough one, man, because I think that Jacksonville, they had a great season last year. They end up winning a playoff game. Then they go to the Chiefs, and they play good against even the Chiefs. Granted, Mahomes got injured and was playing on a high ankle sprain. However, I think with Doug Peterson, we're going to see a lot of success with Trevor Lawrence over the next couple of years. I think they're building a good team around him. And I'll be honest with you guys, it might be considered a hot take now, and we'll see what kind of season he has next year. But I think Trevor Lawrence belongs up here in this elite tier, elite group. Trevor Lawrence came out of college as being one of the number one rated quarterbacks coming out of college since Andrew Luck, since Peyton Manning, since all those guys. And obviously his first year wasn't that great, but I mean, come on, he had Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was literally kicked out of the league before the season even ended. He got fired. Like, I almost don't even want to count that as Trevor Lawrence's first year. I almost want to just scrap that year. And Trevor Lawrence's first year with a actual bona fide head coach. Trevor Lawrence's first year with an actual bona fide head coach, he balls out. And with the weapons that they have on offense, I think he's going to be able to continue it. And on top of that, this coming up season, he's getting Calvin Ridley. I think that's only going to help him become even better. And with that being said, I think that Trevor Lawrence is elite and is capable of being elite and taking his team to the playoffs and even winning playoff games. And so, with that being said, I'm going to leave him up here in the elite tier, and we're going to move on to the next quarterback. All right, next on this list is Kyle Trask. We're going to put him here. Rookie or hasn't played yet. He just hasn't played yet. We'll see if he gets any playing time. I think Baker Mayfield's going to start on the Bucs over him. We just haven't seen anything about Kyle Trask. And with that being said, we're going to leave him down here in the rookie or hasn't played yet and move on to the next quarterback. Next on this list is Trey Lance, and he's in the same situation. I mean, he started last year, had one game, did okay. Then his next game literally breaks his leg, gets injured, is out for the rest of the season. Haven't gotten to see much of him either. Don't know if we're going to ever really see much of him, at least with the 49ers, considering the fact that they like what they have in Brock Purdy. They go out and get Sam Darnold, and then it's kind of like, well, shit, what do we do now? We got Trey Lance that we traded 3 draft picks for, but I don't know. That whole thing is a mess. I just know that we haven't seen anything of Trey Lance really and what he's capable of. He could suck. He could be a baller. It's yet to be seen. Therefore, we're leaving him down here in this tier, and we're moving on to the next quarterback. Okay, next on this list, we have Tua Tagovailoa, or however you say it. I just call him Tua. And I think, honestly, Tua is a baller for sure. I think the only reason that Tua is not up here in the elite group is just because of his health and his injuries that he has had have made it really tough for him to stay on the field. I mean, you can argue the same thing about Lamar Jackson, but at least Lamar Jackson has won an MVP. Lamar Jackson's won playoff games, or he's won a playoff game, but he's taking his team to the playoffs every year. I think Tua has been sort of a product of the system, too, as far as, I mean, how can you not be successful with having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, 2 of the best, fastest wide receivers in the league? You have Mike McDaniels, which is a pretty decent offensive mind. If Tua can stay healthy all this next season and take his team to the playoffs and even win a playoff game, definitely deserves to be moved up into the elite group. However, it's yet to be seen. I know people were saying that he was in the MVP chance and race before he got injured last year, so you would think that would make him elite. However, I need to see it at a more consistent rate. And with that being said, we're gonna put him in baller for sure. And like I said, if he has a great year this coming up year, definitely could move up. But with that being said, we're just gonna leave him here in baller for sure. Alrighty, next on this list we have Deshaun Watson, and if I'm being honest with you guys, take this as a joke or whatever. The guy should not be starting in the league. I mean, when you have the allegations and the cases that are put against you like that, I mean, granted, we're not sure if they're ultimately true or not, but when you have that many, it's just I don't like talking about the guy. I don't like the guy at all in general. However, I'm going to be more realistic and at least put him up here in average. He didn't have really that great of a season when he came back after his suspension with the Browns. I mean, he was all right. He wasn't great. He wasn't terrible. However, my overall opinion is the guy shouldn't be in the league, really. I mean, unless his cases are ultimately truly false and they're false allegations, then I take it all back. But if they are real, guys shouldn't be in the league. That's just my opinion. I mean, every quarterback that's done really bad things, you can say even Adrian Peterson shouldn't be in the league. Like, guys that do these really shitty human things outside of the NFL don't deserve to be in the NFL. It's a privilege to play in the NFL. It's a privilege to make that much money. It's just the NFL needs to do a better job at that kind of stuff, and it's sad to see because, it's the NFL. It's a sport that I've always really enjoyed and love. And so, with that being said, I'm not going to go on too much more on a tangent. I think I almost said Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson is a capable quarterback. I think he was rusty at the end of last season. We'll see how he does this season with the full season with his team, a full offseason and whatnot. I think just though as of right now, he's average. However, if he ends up having a great season with the Browns, definitely can move up to baller. So with that being said, I don't want to spend more time on him. Let's move on to the next quarterback. Alrighty, next on this list, we have Carson Wentz. And yikes, man. I mean, I'm sorry, Carson Wentz, but you're just not a starter in the league. I think he could be a really good backup, kind of like a lot of these guys could be. What's sad is that Carson Wentz, before his injury on the Eagles, was borderline an MVP candidate. Then he just kind of spirals down from there, can't stay healthy, ends up, having these crazy turnovers, doesn't have a good year with the Colts, doesn't have a good year with the Commanders, and it's just like borderline now. I don't know if he can start really anywhere. So that being said, I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on him. I think if he ends up getting another chance on another team, or a guy gets injured and he's the backup, he ends up starting. I mean, if he balls out, he can end up moving up here to average. I just don't see him ever being more than average ever again in this league. I mean, borderline right now, he just shouldn't even be a starter. So that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. Next on this list, we have Bryce Young. Gonna go ahead and automatically put him down here. I think it's funny that out of every single quarterback in this whole entire list, he is the only one where they don't have him in his jersey. I mean, the guy's still wearing a suit and tie. Like, I don't know. It's funny. I just think it's funny. However, like I said, haven't seen anything of him. He just got drafted this year. I think he's going to have a high ceiling in the NFL and has a good chance of having success with the Panthers. I mean, that whole division is really just up for grabs. And so if he ends up having a baller of a rookie year, he could definitely take his team to the playoffs. However, I can't put him up anywhere else in this list just because I haven't seen him play yet. He's a rookie. So that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next quarterback. And last but not least, I mean, actually, he could be considered least. I don't know. I mean, that's up to you guys. In my opinion, he's not very good. Is Zach Wilson. And it's funny that they even have him on this list because most of this list is guys who, I mean, I guess he did start last year, so it's kind of hard to not have him on this list. However, he's definitely not going to start this year now that they have Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. But Guy had a terrible season, and Guy hasn't had even necessarily, he hasn't had any reason to prove why he should be a starter in this league. And just the way that last season went for Zach Wilson was not a great look. I mean, not only does he not put up good numbers statistically, but the way that he had his press conference about saying that, that it wasn't his fault, that it was the rest of the team's fault, it's just, it doesn't show very good leadership qualities. And when you can't put up good stats and you can't show that you're a good leader, I mean, most of the time that just leads to guys not starting in the league anymore. And so with that being said, Zach Wilson, you're young. You still have a chance to turn around your career and prove that you can be maybe a starter somewhere else, or maybe even after Aaron Rodgers retires for the Jets. But it's yet to be seen. Last year was terrible. Guy shouldn't be a starter right now. Maybe he will after a couple seasons or so. But with that being said, guys, that is a conclusion to our list. I think this is overall a pretty good list. I mean, you have a lot of guys down here that, depending on how the season goes, can definitely move up, and be capable starters. As far as average, you have a lot of guys here, like I said, that can end up moving up to ballers like Kenny Pickett, like Brock Purdy, like Deshaun, maybe even Mac Jones, maybe Kyler Murray, maybe Justin Fields. Like, those are just some examples of guys that I put here in the average that could definitely move up. And then you have guys that are up here on baller that, if they don't have a good season, they definitely move down to average. I mean, you very well could see that for Matt Stafford. You could see that for Russell Wilson. I mean, I don't think Kurt can move down there because he's been too consistent. Jared Goff, though, if he has a terrible season, could move down there. Geno Smith, if he's just a one and done, have one good year, doesn't ever have a good year again, moves down to average. Daniel Jones doesn't have a good year, moves down to average. Same thing with Dak. If Dak gets so much praise, but like I said, he always puts up good numbers against bad teams. Haven't really seen it against good teams. Ends up having a stinker of a year. I could very much be okay with him moving down to average. Same thing with Derek Carr. Doesn't have a good year with the Saints, moves down to average. But yet, if all of these guys have a crazy breakout year where they take their team to the playoffs and they make a deep run in the playoffs, you could borderline move them up into the elite group. You know what I mean? Like, I could very well see that for all of these guys. And then these elite guys, I mean, if they would have to have a very terrible season in order for them to move down to baller. I think all of these guys are elite quarterbacks for a reason, and I think they're going to continue to be elite quarterbacks. And then obviously at the top of the whole list, you got Patrick Mahomes. The guy is the top dog of the league. He's the certified MVP of the league. I mean, there's just not really a whole lot to dispute about it. So with that being said, guys, this is the conclusion of the NFL's quarterback tier list. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below in the comments. Let me know if there's anything you guys would move up, what you would move down. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys hit that like button. And if you guys want to see more content, such as other tier videos, or I do a lot of Let's Plays for different games and stuff like that. If you guys are interested in seeing any of that content, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button down below. And without further ado, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.